The voice of Sherry. Durian ASEAN. Good morning, ASEAN. Welcome to the ASEAN Breakfast Call this morning. Today is a Wednesday, the 26th of March. And we have two guests with us today who is also co-hosting our new session together. Willem.
Yeah, morning, ASEAN.
And we have Ren Chung.
Hi, glad to be back.
Yeah.
For those who missed out before, Ren Chung was also in our first show, and he is from the Women's AIDS Organization, but today representing Comango, which is a coalition of NGOs, yeah?
Great to be here.
Talking about the UPR review. So stay tuned if you want to hear what's Malaysia's UPR review process like in Geneva, which Ren Chung just flew back for. So I think this is a pretty interesting thing to hear it from direct experience. Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Right. All right. So today, briefly, news update about MH370, coming from Jakarta Post. We're noting how, a lot of news outlet is talking about, Malaysia's MH370 after the statement that was given late Monday by Najib. So Najib, says that, all right, now the missing flight has ended in Indian Ocean, which is west of Perth. So he released a full statement which basically says that according to the investigation that is done by the UK Air Accidents Investigation Branch, the AAIB, in collaboration with one of the firm in the UK, which uses a new type of data analysis. And according to their new analysis, which is conducted by Inmarsat, right? So they concluded, using physics and calculations that the plane ended up in the southern corridor west of Perth. And because there's no possible landing site, so Najib said that, with deep sadness and regret, I have to inform you that, according to this data, the flight has ended in southern Indian Ocean, and text messages has been sent out to the family members, and family members has also been informed. And what we saw on the press conferences, especially the one that happened in Lido Hotel, is that the family is clearly in a state of despair. A lot of them has mixed reaction, whether it's anger, some of them collapsed,
But I personally have a doubt with I'm not saying that I've doubt to the professional and expert that done and gathered this data, right? But what my doubt is that I'm doubting about why we can make a conclusion based on the data without finding any debris or anything that can prove that the plane has crashed. So I think it's not that convincing to me, myself. I personally just still believe that there's still a hope of the plan to be found, rather than just simply have a conclusion. I would rather to get it as assumptions. All right, okay, we get it, the data. Okay, this data proves that, regardless how you're going to say that, beyond what kind of the reasonable doubts or so on. But to me, we still can make a wish, or probably it's just I'll prefer it as an assumption rather than conclusion. That's my
I think a lot of people share your concern as well, especially how people are talking. If the plane really went down in the ocean, it would have broken up on impact and the debris would easily be spotted. But Rin Chung, what do you think?
I'm actually a bit more sympathetic towards the Prime Minister in his decision. I think, to be fair, it wasn't put out as a absolute conclusive conclusion, but rather most likely and rather extremely likely conclusion based on
beyond reasonable doubt,
based on the analysis they received. So I think actually to further to not come out and say that, look, here's what we think probably happened, that might have even caused prolonged suffering for the families involved. So I think the based on the information that we receive, I think this is quite possibly a good decision.
A good decision to make a conclusion about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, to be fair, I think what was said was beyond reasonable doubt, isn't so not the absolute truth, and the government has said that they would continue search to actually find any debris from the plane, from the
But
wreckage.
at the very first place, when the plane claimed missing, some of the experts said it might be crashed somewhere else. But why they don't confirm it as crash, and now they confirm it as a crash, but just based on the data from the Inmarsat, we still, because this is the very first time the Inmarsat used this technology to trace down the plan, where is it located. So you see, I'm not sure how accurate and how precisely they can get the data and make a conclusion about the crashing of the plane.
Right. For the benefit of our listeners who don't know how the calculations were done, so basically Inmarsat calculated the pings that was automatically transmitted every hour from the aircraft after the rest of its communication system has stopped. So this indicated that it continued flying for hours after it disappeared from the flight path. And also, from the signals, so they calculated how long it took to reach the satellite and the angle of elevation. So that's why initially they provided two information. Most likely the plane either flew north or they flew south. Right? Yeah. And then, Inmarsat scientists actually interrogated the faint pings using a technique what they call Doppler effect.
Yes.
Yeah, so which is
a signal called ping that is still constantly transmitted from the plane to the satellite. So that's how they got it. But I wonder.
So they compared that to also how other Boeing 777 that the flight path, and the data received from other Boeing 77 that flew south was exactly the same as and it matched exactly as MH370 pings. So that was why they concluded it flew south, and that
it ended there. Right? But it ended there doesn't mean that it crashed. But I don't know, because previously they said that they can switch off the transponder, right? So that there won't be any transmission from the plane. But now they claim they got enough transmission. Would it be possible? Another possibility that this kind of the transmission could be turned off again? I'm not sure.
Missing somewhere else. The transponder signal and the pings that they're talking about, I think that's separate. I think they're separate.
So one can be turned off, the other one cannot.
Perhaps it was, perhaps something like that. Either it was turned off, or one went missing and broke, and one didn't break. But my understanding is that it's a separate thing.
Yeah, of course, it's separate things. The question is that since the transponder can be turned off, why not the other thing? Can it be turned off, or maybe have a technical breakdown so that they cannot detect it? So they just make conclusion that it's ended somewhere. But actually, in the fact that maybe it still flew to somewhere else. I'm not sure.
Right. I think that conclusion was made also using information on how much fuel was left in the plane.
Yes. This is one of the consumptions. But I don't know how to say that. To me, I still have a very strong doubt whether we can make a conclusion the plane has been crashed into the South Indian Oceans.
So yeah, I think a lot of people share the same concern. In fact, China in Manila Bulletin talk about how they want proof of it, and also by the relatives talking about if my son is dead, then at least give me the body, or like some proof. That's what a lot of them has been asking for. So, but we just hoped for the best. Although I personally feel for the victims, and also knowing that maybe search and rescue mission is very expensive to continue, like costing millions of dollars. But again, do we owe the family member an explanation, or more than just saying that we calculated using some physics? This is how it ended.
I do agree with that. We still need an explanation about them. And not only that, okay, the other thing about the blaming on the Malaysian government or to the Malaysia airline, I wouldn't say they are doing the right thing or they're doing the wrong things, okay? But just put in a fair, how are we going to look at this? Actually, just imagine that, okay, if the Malaysian government or the Malaysia airline, they just tell you that, okay, the plane is still in the air and flying somewhere else. So what can we do? What can others do? actually we can't do anything even though we know the plane is somewhere, the exact location, you know where is it. But what we can do, because someone is controlling the plane, you cannot shoot it down because the passenger is still in there.
Oh, that will happen in the US.
You're going to shoot it down? I don't think so.
I mean, after some warning, yes.
After some warning,
yeah,
without caring about the passengers, there's still some innocent people in there.
Well, if you invaded someone's airspace, I think legally, after some warning, sufficient warning, they actually have the right to do that in defense.
Okay, that's about the United States, right? But how about to those in the ASEAN country? Now the plane is flying around in the ASEAN country. So what can we do?
I think this case also reveals how military preparation is lacking in ASEAN nations.
So how are we going to solve the problem if that's happened? Even though if you know the plane is flying above your air, above the sky. So what are you going to do? I don't think we can do anything much about it. So even that's why I said if we keep blaming about the government, keep blaming about Malaysia Airlines, it's not that fair. I think they are doing their job, but maybe they are not that efficient. They have their wrong part, or maybe the part that they do it right. But I don't think we keep blaming them is the right things.
So again, if like both of us optimists will still hope for the best for the family.
I still have a hope for that.
All right. And now let's move on to Taiwan. Talking about the student protests recently. What happened in Taiwan now is that there was an ongoing deal between Taiwan and China. That in Taiwan, it was the Ma Ying-jeou, who is currently leading Taiwan, wants to pass a law, and protester claims that he wants to force the law to be passed in secrecy without informing the people what the law actually contains. Basically, it facilitates trades between Taiwan and China. But of course, from the Taiwanese protester point of view, which is mainly organized by the youth, and it is in fact the largest student-led protest so far, from Taiwan. They think that number one, they don't know what the content is, and this might also undermine the SME, the small medium enterprises in Taiwan, undermine their livelihood. And secondly, they are also very wary of China. So because historically, Taiwan and China at one point, Taiwan even had a seat in the UN Security Council until quite a few countries or a lot of countries turned their back on Taiwan, and then hence after that they have became, let's say, an autonomous region of China. So since then onwards, Taiwan and China has always had a kind of disagreement, or I should say, well, it depends on who you talk to, right? The leaders, Ma Ying-jeou, he is friendly towards China, but a lot of segments of the society are not. And in fact, so this, especially the students, they occupied their legislature, or more accurately known, their government headquarters, to demand that they want to have a say in these dealings between China and Taiwan. So
actually, this is a cross-strait services trade agreement, isn't it?
Cross-straits.
Yeah,
the Taiwan Straits.
Services agreement. So this type of agreement, actually, it would open up about 80 of the China service sectors to the Taiwan and 64 Taiwanese sectors to China.
Yes.
To me, I don't see the very bad side of it. I mean, in terms of the the right word to use it.
As far as globalization goes.
Yeah, in the trading. Yeah. So they have this kind of the globalizations. So I don't see any negative side much about this. So what do you think, Rencho?
Yeah, I think a few things to keep in mind when discussing trade agreements, trade pacts. I think one is, of course, in theory, there will always be winners and losers. So once you open up your market to other countries, perhaps consumers will reap the benefit of maybe cheaper prices or better products, and the producer in the other country would also reap the benefit of having access to this other market, but the local producer in the first country would perhaps might lose out due to this increased competition. So I think that's always something to you'll get some backlash because of this. I think and so that's maybe a question of efficiency and or like long-term benefits over short-term pains, perhaps. But I think some other areas that we need to consider are, I'm not sure necessarily in this case, but in trade agreements generally, is on things like what are the environmental standards, or what are the labor standards that apply in both countries. So is one country getting an advantage over the other because they do not comply to certain higher standards that one country might or may not have? So this might be a concern in this particular agreement. Another thing to think about is the idea of whether or not both parties are starting on the same on a level playing field. So, for instance, there might be some justification to provide some time and some limited assistance towards developing a national industry, and of course this has to be limited and not indefinite. So I think these are some considerations that need to be taken into account. But I think the one principle I think maybe we can all agree on is the idea of how these agreements are made and
what's the terms and conditions
in how they are put into law. So I think in this case, the students were unhappy about the lack of transparency when the law was actually this agreement was being drafted or agreed upon by the government. I think we see similar concerns in Malaysia when dealing with the TPPA, where the big concerns with the law, with the agreement itself, but I think an overarching concern of the lack of transparency and lack of access to what actually is in this agreement to the public and even lawmakers themselves.
But actually, to those protesters, I guess that not only concerned about the transparency about how to make the law, but the other thing what they concern, maybe some of them is worried about the fact that will allow the China to expand the influence over a fiercely independent and proudly democratic territory that China still sees as the renegade province. So that's what they're concerned about. They just worried that China will just comes in and then influence them and become another China. I mean, in the political way, they think about that, you know.
In fact, I saw a pretty moving video that was released by their official channel, I believe, the Occupy Taiwan legislature video. They were talking about why we are doing this. So the reason why they are doing this is they are trying to say, preserve their long-fought democracy that they say was hard-earned in Taiwan than being encroached simply by China coming in via economic means. And I think that I personally feel for that because I know how in the past in Taiwan, even media freedom was something that was hard fought for. In fact, some of the news agencies and media outlet actually has to rebel against rule of law or rebel against orders to shut down, and that's defying military who was beneath their officers, and that shows how much they have did to preserve Taiwan's democracy to the day it is today. And this is something that the youngsters want to continue to protect. Yeah, so which I think is a very valid point.
That's why in Taiwan they have the two parties. One of them is just one. I mean, they are close to China, and the other one they want the Taiwan to become independent. So these two different parties, they have a different will and a fight for their objective is different.
Absolutely. Right. I think one more point to mention on this story is the way in which the student protesters were dispersed. There were news reports that the government used water cannons, possibly dragged students out of parliament in an aggressive way. So I think that's another aspect that we need to highlight.
Yeah, in fact, we saw that more than 150 was injured because of this, because they were forcibly evicted. Yeah, of course, one of the good outcome is now that the Ma Ying-jeou actually invited the student leaders to talk, let's discuss it over. But however, some of them are still charged in court, for a lot of various reasons. For example, like vandalism, for example, like, obstructing like government works and whatnot. So, and I think that one of the big questions that they are asking is because Ma Ying-jeou also claimed that this is not how democracy function. But my question would be, if rule of law, quote unquote, is used all the time, right? And we are supposed to be obeying all laws, whether it's just or unjust. Then things like whatever happened in India with Gandhi, or whatever happened during apartheid state. This wouldn't have happened if we all be good citizens, quote unquote, and just obey the law. And is this what democracy is supposed to be?
Somehow I agree with you, but when you look back at the Thailand cases, do you consider that you claim it as a democracy?
Well, I honestly, I don't know, because I hear a lot of, let's say, hearsay about what happened in Thailand, like what actually is behind all those protests. Since I can't investigate them, I don't think I could.
Yeah, I think the principle here is to distinguish between the right to assemble and protest peacefully, and the motive to that protest. And we may not agree with whatever motive or call to action, but I think we must sort of the right to assemble and protest peacefully. I think something that we all can agree upon.
In fact, I just read a piece from a professor from Nottingham University talking about how this student protest in Taiwan is actually a form of a justified political communication, and also how the use of force from the government now is hurting Taiwan's image of soft power, that they have built up over the generations.
That's interesting.
So I think that this is, I don't know if I should classify this under an emerging trend around the world, where citizens feel that they are disenfranchised from their government, or the government has betrayed them. But it seems that in a lot of places, these are all happening.
Yeah, they just found that I think they just felt in that way. Government always betrayed them.
And the student protester also claimed that now I think the approval rate for Ma Ying-jeou is like 9%.
Oh.
Yeah, right. Okay, moving on to Myanmar. Let's talk about how in the Kachin state, as highlighted in the newspaper of Irrawaddy, they are talking about how in Kachin state, the Kachin Independence Army released statements talking about how it's released by the UK publication, right? That claims that the Burma army actually suffered a staggering death total of 5,000 casualties during their conflict with the Kachin Independence Army. And this has happened since June 2011. But it seems like a lot of people are not highlighting this, because most of the people who knows about Myanmar, if anything, is about the Rohingya. But that's not the only ethnic minorities that is facing problems. In fact, Kachin state looks like a pretty serious problem too. I mean, 1,000 to 5,000 deaths. And this is only on the army, Burma army side, not even the, accounting the collateral damages or whatnot. Yeah. So, also coming from Myanmar Times, talking about how, confusion and apprehension over new media laws. So what they are proposing in Myanmar now is to scrap the Press Emergency Powers Act. And then they want to replace it with this new act. But it seems like people are generally concerned whether this will improve media freedom or not, because Chapter 3(4)(a) of the media law now states that, this was the previous one, yeah? So they have the right to freely criticize the legislature, executive, and judiciary, but only in conformity with the constitution. right now they have chapter 4 instead, talking about how the printers and publishers cannot publish articles that hurt national security, law enforcement, public stability, or a citizen's right to equality, freedom, and justice. So we wonder if this is a sign of progress or not in the state of Myanmar.
It should be considered as progress. Yes.
A lot is to be seen probably in the implementation of this law. I mean, because terms like national security, public stability. I mean, these actually are accepted limitations to certain rights under international human rights standards. But where we see the violation, I'd argue, is with the implementation and interpretation of what actually is a public security or public morality threat. So, for instance, is a festival to promote the rights of LGBT communities? Is that something that can be deemed a national security threat or not? I think in Malaysia we've seen I'd argue the misuse of the justification of national security to silence certain voices and groups.
And things like public stability and even a citizen's right to freedom could be interpreted in Malaysia, for example, that, it should be traffic free, and, traffic congestion is one of the reasons to disallow public assembly. So, yeah, it is. So, because they would argue, some from the government would argue that, because another citizen has the right to work or the right to smooth traffic. Therefore, it supersedes your right to protest.
But
which
actually,
I don't think.
Yeah, how you balance up the rights of as citizens? Actually, what the government claims is also having their point. You see, yeah, that's their right of the citizen to continue their business. But if you going to protest and you make them cannot do the business, is it? So you are abusing the rights of the other citizens. So how are you going to balance up that?
I think if we look at what happened during the rallies, using Malaysia as an example, I think the argument that the businesses have suffered, that's not entirely true. In fact, for instance, the public transportation, the use of LRT on that day actually increased. Even one of the executives of the company said that it was actually we increased usage during the birthday tree rally, and if you look at all the businesses that were around the rallies, they were full with customers on those days. So I think most of the claims that
the roadblocks. I'm referring to the roadblocks and everything. We have, some of my friends, or even I heard from my friends, they said that about the roadblocks. They're making the road is congested with all the transport there.
It's probably true that a certain amount of inconvenience was caused.
Yeah.
But I would argue that that small inconvenience is definitely worth it's better to protect the right of people to assemble peacefully and promote whatever causes they want, and the minor inconvenience, I think it's a cost that is reasonable.
But how we prevent the chaos that created by some of those people that even though you want the peaceful but sometimes it's not that peace,
I think, again, if you look at the Malaysian case, the chaos was started not by the protesters necessarily, rather the enforcement officers that dispersed the crowd using aggressive means like water cannons. And so I think that's for the Malaysia case, that is the reality. And then in the general case, I would say that in many protests, there may be certain minority groups or individuals who will be looking to cause some trouble, but then those people need to be isolated and dealt with as individuals rather than as a collective. Just because one small group does something that should not taint or should not cause the whole group to be tainted, be labeled as causing chaos.
Also, to counter the argument of economic, damaging effect of protests, I would say that just looking at examples. I read a research talking about how in Denmark they spend 296 days of working days in 5 years to protest. And this is over 1,000 workers. And so it shows that the GNI, okay, for example, for Denmark is number 6, yeah? And for Malaysia is number 62. But yet, GNI, economic development does not correlate with protests. It might be temporarily maybe inconvenient, but in the long run, I would argue that, with a lot of example, whether is it Denmark, it's France, you're talking about Spain, Iceland, South Korea, it will not be. In fact, it's better for democracy.
Yeah.
But when look back to the ASEAN country is different. What you mentioned just now is considered as a quite developed country. And if a developing country like ASEAN, I think it's a different story sometimes.
But I think that we need to start with little baby steps of learning towards a developed democracy, because we can't reach there if we try to suppress all this, whether is it what China does. And
another point to make is that people don't want to go to the street. Usually people only go to the street when they're really not satisfied with something,
oppressed
so the action of going to the street is already it's the only way they see as their way of getting across their message to the government of the day, usually. So I'd say that the taking away that right to assemble would take away a vital means for the public to send their grouses when they already think that they have no other means of doing so effectively.
Yes. And also, just to re-highlight the point, 296 days in 5 years is like taking 1 year off from work to protest. And yet their GNI, the economics are still number 6 in the world for Denmark. So it's a process of learning, I believe.
I hope it's applicable to Thailand and Indonesia and Malaysia as well.
Yeah, I'm sure that with more exposure and more education, civic education, it will go better.
Should make the citizen mature enough to how to look at the assembly and so on. Otherwise, it just simply creates some troubles in the rallies. I don't think that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. That I agree. Right, now moving to Indonesia, talking about the upcoming elections. So from Antara News, talking about how the running candidate, which is Djokovic, is conducting a lot of belusukan, what they call visiting areas that are not commonly visited, right? So Joko Widodo, or Jokowi, he is running for presidency, and currently he is meeting people, conducting belusukan, and he says that he has been doing that since the year 2004. So I'm personally wondering. One of our colleagues' comment is that if you want to do belusukan, you should do it anonymously. If you truly want to help or know the people or whatnot.
Somehow it's true. If you do it quite openly, the purpose that you want to do the belusukan, you want to gain the support. Yeah, publicity. You want to gain the support. It's very obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, in a sense, I'd say that's true. But in a way, that's how the democracy works, right? You're seen to be good, and that's why you're elected. But by being seen to be good, hopefully you're also actually doing good.
Right. So I was just having a little chat with my friend from Indonesia yesterday. It seems like from him, he's pretty positive about Djokovic as well. Yeah, which is pretty interesting because we read earlier from a news piece talking about how the approval rating for Djokovic seems to be pretty high, and he seems that what he said is that my friend said that Djokovic has a more pure or less vested interest than other running candidates. So he thinks that it will be a good choice. Yeah. For Indonesia.
That's the main reason for them to choose Djokovic. Or is there any other interest? Is there any other reason that Djokovic appeared to be a better leader compared to others?
I think one thing can be said about the use of executive position, past executive positions, to portray oneself as a leader. So Jokowi, as the governor of Jakarta, is seen as in an executive position doing a fairly good job, So that sort of builds the voters' trust in this person. And some was bringing the conversation parallels to Malaysia. I think some were saying that the Kajang move, in fact, was also a way to try and get Anwar Ibrahim in a position of executive power, to be seen as a leader, and that which would then set him up for be a platform for him to actually run for the prime ministership, or be in a position to be to be popular for the next general elections.
But to me, I was so sorry to say that I think that was excuses.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not. I wouldn't say that it's justified to what it was done.
Yeah.
But that would be the practical benefit.
Yeah.
For the parties involved.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Now moving from Indonesia to up north in Brunei, talking about how they have discovered vast oil and gas reserves in Brunei. So
that's good news.
Right. So they are talking about how this newly discovered vast reserve of oil and gas in South China Sea are expected to deliver 3.5 billion barrels of oil by 2035, and it's also potentially going to double their their KPI within the if you measure it with a certain acre. Yeah. So I think that I was just chatting a little with my friends who work with the government oil and gas industry. He says that normally when they reveal that they have discovered new oil and gas reserve, it's normally a calculated step. Because they probably already know in advance whether they have how much, and how, a lot of them are not disclosed to public yet. But the fact that these are disclosed is meant to help the government in certain ways. Yeah.
So is that this discovery, is this belongs to China, the Brunei, or belongs to any other party?
I believe as this
solely
news
belongs
piece,
to Brunei.
Yeah, from Brunei Times indicates it's something for Brunei only.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, it's back to the question of sustainability.
Yeah. But somehow we still need to find more replacement energy that can be reused again, rather than just based on the oil and gas. Someday it will be ended somewhere, or dry out.
And of course, if you just keep producing much more cars and much more things,
that's what we are doing now, isn't it?
Yeah. How are you gonna keep up with all this?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. From Cambodia Daily now, talking about how the sugar plantation are under investigation for using child laborers. So technically, the labor law in Cambodia is that you can work if you are 15 years old, but it also allows children as young as 12 years old to do light work that are not non-hazardous and as long as it doesn't interfere their school attendance. But we saw that the plantation foremen actually argue that we are actually helping the children's family because they needed the extra money, and they are only doing light work. They're not doing very heavy work. They are only carrying sugarcane sticks. So we wonder though, because I personally think that having studied a little about child labor and how it actually affects their life in the future, especially when they do not have the chance for education.
Is it in a positive way or negative way?
I personally think that every child should have a right to education until maybe they finish secondary school or a certain level of education attainment.
But if they come from a very poor family,
right,
how will you afford to send them to have some education?
Well,
so that's why the kids need to come out to work.
So the right to education should be a universal value. Yeah. So the parents should not, be forking out hundreds of dollars just to send their poor kids to school. Yeah, that's one.
Yeah, I think as a principle, even looking at the Child Rights Convention, this is one of the UN human rights conventions. It doesn't really say that, what it says is that the right of the child to be protected from economic exploitation and from performing any work that's likely to be hazardous or to interfere with the child's education, and also says that countries should provide a minimum age or minimum ages for employment. So it doesn't really say that all children can't work. It just says that they can work, but under these conditions, which in theory I think is practical, because as we were saying, in some countries perhaps any kind of work might interfere with their education, but in some countries that there maybe isn't a choice. Perhaps that's something that can be admissible. But I guess the question is, how are these laws being enforced, and how, for instance, like they claim that it's not a hazardous condition, or they claim that it does not interfere with a child's education. How are those being enforced? I think that would be what I'd be more concerned with.
It should be more optional, right? To maybe some of the family.
Ensuring the option of education is there, but also to ensure that these provisions and these conditions are not being used as excuses to interfere with the child's education, or actually put the child in a working condition that would be deemed hazardous or exploitative.
Right. All right. That would be the end of our news session today. Thank you guys for contributing, and we'll see you after the break.